We're back, and we are COMP 1004 in the winter 2017 semester, week 9. Oh, God. Part 2 of our broadcast, and this is part 2. We're going to be talking about a couple more things, and then I'm going to let you do some other things. So I don't need this anymore, code first database approach. We talked about that just now, the idea with entity framework. We also talked about, just as a kind of a review, the stuff around link and how powerful it is, right? You can use link just with ADO.NET. There's a link to ADO.NET connection as well. You can do that. So link and entity framework. And we're going to review these concepts again come COMP 2007 when we do that in enterprise computing, right? All right, but there's a couple things I want to do before we stop this. One is I've been using the fill to fill the container. Take a look, right? So I'm using ADO.NET and I'm mixing it up, right? I'm using ADO.NET for some of it. And then for the other parts, I'm using this other stuff, right? Wouldn't it be nice if I can use my table adapter, from my table itself, right? Wouldn't it be nice if I could fill in my table with the data that's coming from my users table? It would be nice, right? And let's go to my data form for a second. First of all, one thing at a time. If I go to my data form, and if I go to properties, and notice that my name is data grid view 1. That's a terrible name, right? We need to call this something like the names grid view, right? Or something like that, or the users grid view. You know, that might be a better name. So let's rename this thing. The users grid view, right? There we go. Users grid view. And we can also call this the users data grid view, which is really what it is. There we go. All right, that's 1. 2, let me save that. When I save that, does it propagate, right? Because I've changed the name of my table and whatever, or my grid view. Let's take a look at my data here for a second. So on the back end, which is where everything's happening. So here's the user table adapter. My data form itself is the form, and I'm accessing the user's table. Well, the reason why this is connected is because inside the data grid view itself, I have my user's binding source as the connection source. Does that make sense? Take a look. This is my user's binding source. I have other data sources that I can access too, right? I have my couple of project data sources. They can take a look at the ones I have. I have this one, a data set. I have this one, a data set. And I also have, I can add my own data source if I want to. But in this case, I want to click on none. And please forgive me with what's going to happen with the table. I do apologize ahead of time. If I click on none, I get nothing. I can add my own columns. I can edit my own columns if I really want to, right? But if I click on none, I don't have any kind of pattern whatsoever. Okay, you're going to say, well, if there's no pattern, then why bother, right? But I want to be able to connect. And you may want to do this at some point as a list of data, right? So in my data form, where I have my adapter, right? This thing here will fill my data set. But I'm not linking to my data set anymore because I just turned it off, right? I'm just going to kind of comment this out. Okay? For now. If I want to put it back, I can. What I want to do here is I want to have access to my table, right? So I'm going to go, right now I'm getting access to my user, one single user, right? Here's my single user. And, you know, I want to get access to multiple users as well, right? So this is the example that I used for a single user. Let's get this gone, right? And I'm going to put this back to, so it returns everything, selects all users. You guys have the other version. I kind of saved that in a video, right? But I'm going to put this one online on GitHub. This is the version that I want you to know about, right? Select all users from the names database, right? That's what this is doing. I still want to put it in a try-catch, okay? Because maybe for whatever reason, I can't connect to the database. Something goes wrong, right? I don't want my application to crash. Worst case, I want to kind of put something up here that says, can't connect to the database or something else. And I might want to put that up in some kind of message, right? For now, it's just a debug a debugging message. Okay, once I've got that, what I want to do is I want to point to my data table, my data grid, right, which is called the user's data grid view. My user's data grid view dot data source, here's my data source, is equal to, instead of first or default, I don't want to do this first or default, I want to change this to toList again. Okay? And I want to point my data source from my data grid view to this users list, like I had earlier, right? I want to say users list. And this, my friends, is the way to bind the stuff I get from my table using Entity Framework to the data grid view. However, the disadvantage to doing it this way is I don't have control of what the data grid view looks like without doing it programmatically. I could programmatically modify my data grid view to have its header and all that kind of stuff, and I would have to do that here, all right? Let me show you this, which is actually the right way to do it, but it makes it a little more tedious. If I press play now, if I did everything correctly, then my data grid view will pop up, right? Here it is. See, same way as it did before. But the difficulty is that I don't have access to what the names are here or anything else, right? Like I did before. Now, if I went in there, if I went to the smart tag over here, and if I went to edit columns, and I know that I can add a column that I want to connect to. Here's my data grid view text box column. I could add it in, right? Like, for example, I can add in a column that says, delete user. So here's my name, my column. It's an unbound column, if you notice, right? See where it says unbound column? And I can name my column whatever I want, like my delete user column, delete user column, right? And I'll just call this thing delete user, right? If I press OK, I add it in there and close. Here's my delete user column. And I press OK again. Notice it pops up, right? Now, where is this going to be? Is it going to be before my user list or after my user list? And this is why programmatically, once you go this way, you either got to go one way or the other here, right? So if I press play, my delete user column comes up here. That doesn't make any sense, right? Should probably come over here with some kind of button in it and whatever, right? So like I said, the challenge is when you wanted to use this method of filling the data here in the data grid view, the challenge is all around what kind of control that I have over my data grid view when I do this. So I can do this, certainly, right? This part here, I can do this. But the challenge is, how do I get access to it? Now, in your assignment 4, to help you out, what I've asked you to do is when you click onto a row or any cell in a row of that data grid view, it's supposed to highlight the entire cell. So think about the logic that goes in there. First of all, I got to detect that I'm clicking on that cell. It's not going to be done in this thing. It's got to be done in some kind of event handler, right? It means I got to listen for an event that's going to show me that I'm clicking on a table, right? That's what I'm doing. Here, what I can do here is format what the user's data grid view is going to look like, right? I have a lot of control. So in here, I can say something like users. Once I have access to this, users data grid view dot, and you can see that I can decide on things like data bindings, data member, data source, default cell style. I can fool around with that. I can also add things like my editing control if I want that in there. Edit mode. I can do all the stuff that I would normally do through the interface. I can do through right here programmatically. So first displayed cell. I can make it focused. I can change the font, the fore color, all that kind of stuff I'd have to do by hand. Grid color, do I have any children, the height of the table, the whole thing. So I have complete control, but it means that when I have complete control, I have to go to the API documentation for what data grid view looks like and how do I add columns in the data grid view, how do I add the columns, what their columns are going to look like, that whole thing, right? So what is there a middle step? Is there some way I can get it so that I have both the power to do both things? And yeah, we can go back to this way, right? And you can use both methods. ADO.NET for filling your table if you really want to. By the way, is this the right way to do it? I mean, ADO.NET is built in. There's nothing for you to do except once you've got a data set, you're connecting the data to the database anyway. You're just using multiple connections, just like you would with Entity Framework. I would still use Entity Framework to pull and sort the data that I get from the table, right? But a lot of it you can do right from your user's data grid view. All right, so how do I fix this? So remember, I took it out. That's why I kind of uncommented it. Uncommented it. There it is, right? I got to put this back, and I also got to make this point to that table. So I'm going to first want to edit my columns, get rid of this thing because I don't need that anymore, right? And what I want to do is change my data source back to my data source that I had in here, right? So here's my other data sources. I have a project data source, which is going to be this one, I'm guessing. This is probably going to be the one. And let's see how this works, if it actually works out still. And the answer is no. Okay, let's try that again. It's not that one. And of course, I unbound it, so I don't know what it is. Users, binding data source, maybe this one? Yeah, that's the one. Okay, so now that I have that, I can control things. I can go into edit columns, and I can choose which columns I want to show. For example, I don't care to show the ID column, right? I don't need to show that one. So I can just either I can remove it. Now, what would be smart? Should I remove it, or should I hide it? What do you think is the right thing to do? I don't want it to show, but it doesn't mean that I want to remove it. And why wouldn't I want to remove it? Because if I click on a cell, I can get the ID that I can pump into my entity data framework, like that little link, the link search, right? I get the ID from the table. Whatever cell I'm clicking on, that cell is part of a column, or sorry, part of a record. I want to get the ID of the user that I'm clicking on, right? That's really what I want to do, right? So I don't want to kill this column. I just want to not show it, right? So read only is true. Header text is ID. I don't care about visibility. I can make this false. So it's not going to show, even though it's physically here. So I can press OK. So it doesn't show up, but it is there. I am getting the information from that, right? And if I run it now, by the way, notice I didn't change the data source. I left the data source there, right? So if I click on one of these things here, right, I'm actually clicking, I should be getting an ID from the data grid view, right? And this event is the click event, right? So if I want to add an event, I click onto this, and notice that I have a bunch of things here, but where I really want to go, and I could add it here as well if I really want to, there's a way. Here's the thing, do I want to be able to add new users? The answer for your assignment is no, so I want to take these off. I don't want to edit, I don't want to delete, so unclick all these options here, right? Enable column reordering. Yeah, I could probably reorder the column, but I don't want to do any of this, right? Okay, cool. I can also click preview data to show me what the data was going to look like. If there's any data, it's going to show up like this, right? Which is really cool. So actually preview the data in your column. All right, but inside my properties, if I look at my properties, I want to go to my little lightning bolt here. And notice that it immediately takes me down to cell content click. Cell content click, which is the event, one of the events I can put. So whenever I click on a cell, the default event handler is this cell content click event. There's double click, there's menu strip, different things here, right? Cell end edit, cell enter, cell leave, cell mouse click, a bunch of different things. Let's use cell content click. So when I click on the content, well, if I use that, that means if I'm pointing at something in the cell that's not content, is it going to trigger? Like white space. Would that trigger the cell? No. So I want any cell to click on any part of the cell, which is cell click, not cell content click. Guys, I'm telling you the tricks here so you know how to do this properly, right? So if I go cell click and I generate my user data grid cell, grid view cell click, right? Okay. I have this sender object, right? The sender object points to what? Cell, right? And I want to convert my sender object from just a sender, which is a type object, to a data grid view cell. That's the cell I want, right? So how do I do that? I can say something like this. If I say, and if I start typing cell, right, we can see that data grid cell is a type. So is data grid view cell. right? Data grid view cell. Why am I showing you this? Data grid view cell, okay, which is the cell that's clicked. Cell that's clicked, right? I'll call this the clicked cell, right? Is equal to data grid view cell, or I can actually do it the other way. I'll downcast, which is better, which is equal to sender object as a data grid view cell. Okay, cool. My clicked cell, right? My clicked cell has a row ID, right? A row. It has a row in my column and so on, right? I can get access to it. This is, I'm trying to show you how to do this thing properly, right? I'm going to say clicked cell dot. If I go to row index, right? That's the index of the row, right? So how many rows do I have? I might have 1,000 rows. Whatever that row index is, from 0 to whatever, that's the row index. I need that, right? And I want to use the columns, the column, whatever that is. If I look at column, I can also look at cell, right? So click cell dot my selected, which is selected. And then you can see that I have other things here. I can see the selected cell. Is it selected, yes or no? What else can I do? If you look here, resizable, row index, selected, size, state, style. These are all the things I can do with it. The value of the click cell, whatever the value is, right? Let's keep looking at other things here that I can do, right? My column index, right? So my column index can tell me which column am I hitting on, right? If I'm going on, one column or the other, right? And I know that whatever my data grid view cell is, I want to get the value, right, from my my table, right? So I want to be able to relate it to the value that I'm getting, and I want to search. Now think about this: what I can do, I can search by name, or I can search by ID, right? So how do I search by ID? Is there some kind of the name of the column that I want, right? Okay. So I want to really get the column ID, column as ID. That's what I want it to be. Column value as ID, right? So, so if I type column, these are the two ones I have. And if I type cell, I can't do that. But I can do my row index, right? Let's see what else I can do here. Row index dot compare to. So I can do that, right? Data grid view cell, one thing I can do. Any ideas? Come on, guys. How about my data grid view itself? Data grid view, which is called the user's data grid view, right? And the user data grid view, I can also, if I type cell, right, or cells, right, cell state changed, right? I want to look for some kind of cell or column or something like that. That's on here, right? So there's the column headers, there's the current cell address, the default cell style. I have access to all this kind of stuff, but I want to be able to do, is the cell dirty? Means that if it's been changed, right? Rows default cell style, selected cells. Okay, selected cells, right? And then dot, let's see what else I can do here. Like, how many cells have I selected? Is read only, is synchronized, sync root, right? So I can check to see if the cell is read only or not, or how many I've selected, my count, cell count. How about columns? Oh, I'm clicking on my cell. I want to try and get back some information about which cell I clicked. I can get the cell, the row index, right? Well, what I really want to get is that column ID, right? I want to get whatever the ID is from the column of the selected row, right? That's what I want to do. I want to kind of do a row column search, right? That's what I'm doing. I got my row and I got my columns, right? So my user's data grid view, I have access to things like my selected columns or selected row, or something like that, right? So again, if I start typing columns, you can see column count. I can get the column count, the number of columns I have, right? I also know that my column count, my zeroth column is going to give back a value, right? Depending on the row index, right? So if I look at the row, my selected column is something I can get back. What other things can I do? My column counts. Looking at all the stuff that I can do, right? Columns header, columns. Okay, that's good. Columns. And can I do one of these? Does it allow me to? I can put in an index, my column with an index of the column itself, right? I know that my column 0 is my ID in this particular case, right? So I could put in a column index of column 0. I could return that, right? But I don't know which column I'm looking at. My data grid view column 0 based on my row, right? Whatever the row is, right? Let's see if I can put in row context menu strip change. How about selected row? Selected cells, selected rows, right? And maybe can I give my selected rows an index, right? And I could say something like my clicked cell dot row index would be that index, right? There's my selected rows. And then if I look at my column, my cells, and then dot, I can add, delete, and so on. You can see that it kind of goes down. I can do a cell count if I really want to. I can do, again, this kind of stuff. But I really want to look at the columns somehow. I want to kind of refer the columns with the rows. That's what I want to do, right? So I can't remember how to do it, right? As an example, what do I do? I can look at MSDN, but this is what I want to do. I want to kind of take my selected cell row index, my row index for my selected cell, and for me to show you this, let's just kind of bug this out for a second. If I go debug.writeLine, and if I go clicked cell.row index, okay, there's the row index of the cell that I've clicked on, right? So why am I doing this? Because I want to get the ID for the row that I've got. Once I get the ID, I get all the data from it. Oof. Or I can read each individual row, but that's a lot of rows, right? If I was to read each individual one, I want to be able to iterate through all the rows by going through the database, right? Okay, let's see what I'm getting here when I do this. So notice that I haven't clicked on anything, but if I click here, right, it gives me a bit of an error. It says, hey, my row index, my click cell row index, it says, object reference not set to an instance of an object. I'm not getting this back, so I've done something incorrect, right? So I've kind of done this, data grid view cell, and I'm trying to, get the clicked cell row index, and I'm trying to return that, but it's not happening. All right. Nice try. Okay. Row index data grid view. Okay. Data grid view. Sure. And from Stack Overflow, I get the following: data grid view dot current cell dot row index. Okay, current cell, property of the current cell, if I want to. Handle the selection changed event and find the index of the selected row. Selection changed. That's a different thing than the event that I have right now, right? This one is the cell click, right? My cell click event, which might not return what I want. Okay, so if I go back to the drawing board, if I go back out here, and if I go down to the properties, and if I go all the way down to selection change, that's something that we can definitely look at. Selection changed event. Double click. Here's my selection changed event, and let's go and try this out with my sender object again, right? So we'll say, and remember, this is if I go back to what it shows me here, it says the data grid view the current cell dot row index, right, where the current cell is the answer, right? That's one thing I could do. This is what I really want to do here. So in this case, your data grid view selected rows collection, right? Selected rows 0, whatever would be, and then the index of that selected row. The first row, or the 0th row, the index of the row that I've selected, right? Selected row 0. So I could do it this way as well, whatever the selected row is, right? But this doesn't quite give me everything I need. I could, if I want to select a row, here's link using that. I could say, because remember, link is access to data, right? My data grid view is data, right? It's just a list, right? So here's something that's interesting. I could sit there and go, well, it's a list, right? And I want to have access to the row that I'm looking at. So I say selected rows dot select R, where R is the returning the index of the row that I've selected. All right, so I could do it with link. I could do it with link, right? But I really want to get access to it through my my row index. I want to have my row index be the sender, because my sender is where the information is. Which row did I click on, right? What row did I click on as the sender information? And if I was going to show you this, even without doing click cell, let's just try this out for a second. So if I just want click cell, I want to return the click cell. And by the way, maybe it's not working because it's actually returning an object, not a string, but let's see what happens. Okay, so I click away, and then I get nothing, look. So even if I click, it gives a space, but it doesn't return anything yet. This works, it's actually returning something empty, is what it's doing. Okay, what if I did the same thing with my selection changed object, right? So I want to kind of get my selection changed as my, whatever the row is that's selected. So I'm going to say, again, data grid view cell. I can actually type that in properly, grid view cell. And we'll say clicked cell, or selected cell, we'll call it, to make it different. And we'll downcast it again, is equal to the sender object as a data grid view cell. Okay. And we'll say selected cell dot, and then here's my selected. It basically gets or sets a value indicating whether the cell has been selected or not, right? And I can also do the row index, which is really what I want to do. My row index is what I want to return. Well, this crap out as well. Debug.log, line. Okay, so 2 events. One is the cell click event. The other one is the cell selection changed event. They both do different things. Let's try this out and see if this is going to work, or if it's going to crap out again. Yeah, right away, right? The reason why this worked is because I have a value that's already pre-selected, right? And it says, again, an exception of type system.null reference exception occurred, right? It's trying to give me the row index of something that a data grid view cell, right? So maybe the type is wrong, right? And in fact, I can change that type, right? Because it should work either way. So let's just stop debugging. So maybe what other types are there for the grid cells, right? So if I want to get a data grid view cell, but I wanted to make it a cell, the selected cell, right? So let's try this out a different way. So we'll say data grid view. Okay. Or if I type in cell, but remember, it already has a bunch of different kinds of cell. There's the click cell, which is this, the data grid cell, right? And then there's some objects, right? Which is what I want. I want an object of a cell collection of different kinds, cell style, cell scopes, right? There's the link cell, okay? And of course, where's the best place to look at it? The data grid view itself. Data grid view. You go to the MSDN class definition. This is the API definition without guesswork at all. Again, I'm trying to give you hints on how to do this thing because I don't want you guys to be blindsided and go, Tom, I don't know how to do it. I've tried 10 different ways and I don't know how to do it, right? So even if you look through this, this is all of them, right? So this is cell border style. Column headers, here's my columns, gets a collection that contains all the columns in the control. All right, but I want only the one that's selected. Here's the current cell, sets the current active cell. All right. That's kind of what we saw as an example, right? Current cell. But what does current cell give me? What other things can current cell do, right? All right, so here's some examples. My first displayed cell, notice that this data grid view first displayed cell is equal to this data grid view current cell, whatever the current cell is. That's setting the current cell. Okay, that's a poor example with C#, right? So that's what the current cell does. There's also current row, current cell changed. Here's my selection changed event. Okay, I like that one. That's the one we were looking at. Okay, here's the event handler. And luckily, they'll give us a little bit of an example. So here's a bunch of different things here. They've added different labels in the controls automatically. This is using it programmatically, right? They populate the data grid view by doing it by hand. This is how you do it by hand, the columns and rows and all that stuff. And then the cell value change is one type, right? What they call update balance, right? And then what they can do is do something like this. Data grid view dot rows. Here's your index. Dot cells. Dot balance. Dot value. Dot toString. That gives me a good indication of what I can do here, right? And then data grid view dot rows with a counter. Dot cells. Deposits. Right. Dot value. And deposits would be the column. Right? So this is kind of how it's done, right? And you can see the example here. Data grid view, rows, cells, and then whatever you want, right? I don't know why that keeps turning on and off, but what was that? Is it? For 2, we're not moving enough. We're not moving enough. So rows and cells is the one we want to do, right? Rows and cells. Okay. Let's do it. The cells, the value that we want to get from the ID, right? And it doesn't matter. It looks like whether we do it inside of any kind of cell, my selection changed event. I call another function to do that, but I can just do it from the actual cell itself. So I don't even have to use the sender object. Okay. That means that I can probably get rid of this one. So let's go back to this one and get rid of it. Remember that I don't want to have some kind of outlier, the cell click event here. It's either going to be one or the other. I don't want to have too many events. Okay, but now it won't kill it because my cell click event is still there. I can get rid of it manually. But this one, what I really want to do here is do something like it said. I can say something like my data grid view dot cells. Oh, sorry. User data grid view dot cells, and now my index, right? Now my cells changed. Now it says my cells is itself, right? So like just from the example, right, is my data grid view dot rows dot cells. So rows, my row index. So rows, and now I want my index, the index of my row that's selected, right? So. And again, I can go user. If I want to know my current cell, right, I want to be able to get my row index from that, right? So for now, if I put row index, whatever it is, that's not going to give it to me. If I go row 0 dot cells, and if I want to look at the cell that I want to look at, which is going to be, as an example, ID, the ID cell, and I want to return the value of that ID cell, that's what I really want to do, right? That's what I want, this line right here. But my row, I've got to show the row index in here. This is my row index. I don't have that right now. I don't have a row index to put in there because I don't know which one I've clicked on. Going back to the example, where here they're using, where I populate my data grid view, that's one thing. But when I do this update balance, right, it really depends on the counter that I'm going to use for each of the cells. So it says data grid views.cells.count -1. Whatever the data reviews count is going to be, right? That's what I want. And then I can add a new row that way. This is what they're doing, right? But that's not what I want. I want to get the row index that I'm clicking on, right? So again, get row index, and then a data grid view C#. Okay. Current row index, sure. And here's the way into current row is equal to into data grid view dot current row current cell dot index. Okay, we can use that. So, and I'll just call that current cell or row index. We'll say var row index is equal to users data grid view. And then just to make sure that it's good, use data grid view dot current row dot index. Current row dot current row dot index. So that's the row index, current row dot index. I'm sure we can get it from the center. I did it before. And then I want to get this information. I want to pump this out to the console. So I want to do a debug dot write line. And pump this all out there to the line there. And let's see if it finally works. Any of those selections that I've changed, when a selection gets changed, take my current row and return the current row that's selected. And it doesn't work. It says an exception of type system that argument exception occurred and was not handled. Additional information exists in the column name ID cannot be found. That's what it is. A name ID. I wonder what I called it. I don't need that. Actually, it doesn't really matter what I search by, but I can go in my column itself. This is my columns. And you can see what my column names are. Right now I have ID, capital I, lowercase d, right? And first name, right? That's what I was searching for, column ID. But let's look at, I don't know, first name, because we hid the column ID for a second. I just want to see anything that comes up right now. Because I know first name exists, right? So that's why I'm searching for it. Let's go first name. Let's take a look at that. And it doesn't like that one either, right? And you guys are not doing anything with me, so I'll just have to continue. But I think it's instead of cells, I think it's, let's see the example here on MSDN. Cell withdrawals of value is not equal to null. Rouse counter, column ID. I think it's columns, row index dot columns dot value or something like that. Columns, see that? See? Nope, it's got to be cells. Maybe cell 0 dot column index. Okay, let's go cell 0, which is the first column, and then dot value, and return that. That would work. That's the 0th column, which is the ID column. And it's 1. Okay, let's try clicking on something else. This is 0, 1, 2. That's 3. So that's ID is 3. That's 5. That's 6. And that's what I wanted. All right, so now that I got the ID, I can sort by that column. So I can say something like my because I know this is the ID column that I've hidden, right? It doesn't really matter. I'm getting a value back, and I can assign that value to something like my current my current ID, and I can search for whatever, whenever I selection changed, I can do a search in here. So I can do something like this. I can say try catch, right, where my exception, I'll kind of print out that message again, the same kind of message that I had before, which is this one. Let's just print the message out if it's an error. And I would do this every time, right? Every time I kind of access the database, I want to be able to do that. And I want to say something like this. I want to say my names list or selected name, var, come on, Tom. var selected name is equal to from, right, name in namesdb dot users, right, and then select name, right? But we also want where the name, where my name dot ID is equal to this value right here, right, which is the ID of the cell that's clicked, right? So current, we'll call this a var current ID. Current ID. We'll make that equal to this. And I think I have to convert this into a number because a name ID, it looks for a number, and that's why I made this. It's an object which I want to cast as an int, downcast. Can I do that? I think I can. Yeah. I want to be able to cast this as an int, and I wonder if I have to do an actual casting. It's lowercase Tom. I think I have to do it this way. And just to see what I get when I do that, I get an integer, and that fixes this problem. And that means I could just cast this as an int itself dynamically, and this would be an integer as well. So I don't have to do this. So I change my vars to the actual explicit casting of whatever it is, right? And now I get a name where I return first or default, which is only one object, right? I'm returning one selected name, right? And I want to get that selected name as the name and ID and everything else, right? And then I can kind of show what that is. Depending on what I print out, I want a debug.log right line. Again, I want my selected name, first name, and then do the same thing for my last name like I did before. Now, if I can do this, I can also assign it to something else like a label, which is your job. Okay. And this is half the work for you right here. So again, if you look at the bottom, right, it's selected 3 times. If I click on this, there's James Bond, there's Jane Doe, there's Matt Murdock, there's me again, there's Peter Parker, right? So now it returns the names of the things, which is exactly what you're looking for. You're looking for to populate a label with a few objects that's from that order, which is exactly what I'm doing here. I'm taking the line, the list, and I'm populating. Now, one thing I'm not doing is selecting the entire line, and there's a trick to doing that too, right? Which I can't show you all the tricks, otherwise I might as well just do the assignment for you. Right? Any questions around this? I wanted to kind of cover this before because I didn't want you to be without this, because this is one of the challenges in this assignment is doing something like this. Okay. All right, that's it for me today. I wanted to cover Unity, but I didn't have a chance because this is more important. So I'll go to changes and let's say updated project. You're going to have next week, no, but there will be one for assignment 5. Right? Why, you want more checkpoints? You want more checkpoints? Yeah, no. You should work hard, but you should work hard for yourself, just so that way it's done, because otherwise, like I said, it'll sneak up on you. It's like tequila, this one, right? It goes down easy, it looks easy, but afterwards it'll sneak right up on you, right? If you're someone who knows how to drink tequila, which I'm not. All right, that's what I've heard. Changes, no, I want to go to sync here and push. So no other questions? You guys, are you guys good? So again, all I'm doing is selecting from the data grid view. Once it's selected from it, I get the information from it. I can populate it into a label. Done. Or a text box, whatever you want. I do. I have a whole class that I teach for Unity, the whole thing, right? There is course. If you look up on YouTube, there's courses that describe that. Like there's a whole 305. Anyone else have any questions? Okay, guys, thank you so much. See you next week. Remember, next week we're going to cover I/O, right, which is the last part of what you need for your assignment number 4.